Hi, everyone. Welcome to Art School Live. I'm Gavin Glakas. I'm guest hosting the show this week because Eric's out of town. And today we have a great artist. We have Kristy Gordon. She's going to join us. Hi, Kristy. How are you?
Hi, Gavin. How are you?
It's so great to see you.
Oh, it's so good to see you too. Thanks for having me.
So what are you going to be working on today?
Well, today I'll be working on this painting that I started from life. I love painting the live model, but then I wanted to add a bit of my own imaginative interpretation to it, and so I'm just creating a background that's a bit more imaginative and adds my own voice.
Well, I'm so excited to see it. So without further ado, let's get the show started.
It's Art School Live with Eric Rhodes. Now, here's your host, Eric Rhodes.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. As you can see, I am not Eric Rhodes. I'm Gavin Glakas. I'm guest hosting the show while Eric is out of town. And today we've got Kristy Gordon with us. Kristy's a great artist, and she's going to show us how to create personal and meaningful paintings. Kristy, take it away.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Gavin. I'm so excited to be here. So I'm just setting my camera up so we can get a nice tight shot of my painting that I'll be working on. And I was just saying I've started it from life, so the figure painting was done with a live model. And then I started to sort of with my own imagination and following my intuition, just any sort of feeling that I felt, whatever direction I wanted to take it, I started to just smear in some of these various background elements. And I thought today I'd start to sort of sharpen it up a bit and refine some of the details a little bit more. So let me just get out my brush here. As you can see, it's kind of this, it's kind of like this kind of web of sort of interconnection between the figure and the animals and the plants. And there's all these tendrils and vines and little things. So with, when we're creating a painting from the imagination, actually, I'll just turn my light down a touch so it doesn't make such a cast shadow. 1 second.
Yeah, I know that people will be really curious to hear about how you find your references, how much of this is out of your head, how much you plan out ahead of time, how many of these decisions about what to add are spontaneous. I'm really curious myself.
That is a great question. That's such a good question. So it's like what I kind of do is I start sort of from my imagination, and I'll just start to sort of smear shapes around. And then I'm going to turn this light right off. I feel like it's casting too much shadow. And then I'll start to gather as much reference as I can in any form. So I was looking at some still life paintings, this sort of Dutch still life paintings, and then some sort of more designy, kind of even illustrative type of images where there's sort of this twisting and twining sort of pattern, that kind of is created. And I thought that was kind of interesting. And then definitely you Google images, and even better sometimes Pinterest has higher resolution images. So if there's a certain subject matter that I want to find, like the other day I was trying to find black jaguars, and it's really hard to find good photo reference. There's not any black jaguars in this particular image, but it's really hard to find good photo reference, and Google images are sometimes too low resolution. So Pinterest can be a great tool for artists to find higher resolution images. And then of course we just have to be careful. Yeah. And then of course we have to be careful about copyright. And as long as you change it, I guess the rule is that it has to be changed 50%, but that's a pretty, what does that even mean? People are always debating it in the courts, but as long as we change it enough, totally changing the context, and sometimes even changing the lighting, it's pretty easy to create an image that's totally unrecognizable. Nobody will ever think that it's.
Well, this to me, in all of your work, it looks very much like your own. I mean, this is your idea. It's your execution. If a couple of the leaves you might have found here rather than there, I don't know if anybody's going to be too upset about that.
Totally. And even if like, well, the bird was painted at the Natural History Museum in New York, but there's other
No
little
kidding,
tours.
really?
Yes, I actually have a special contact that I'm able to go in after hours on Fridays.
Oh my gosh, that is
I
so
know.
cool.
I know, it's my favorite thing in the whole world.
Well, you're going to be besieged by people sending you text and Instagram messages. One of them is going to be me, begging you to come with you on some Friday afternoon, because I can't imagine something better than being in there all by myself painting.
I know, it's my favorite thing, and we could actually do it. So yes, you can. Well, let's talk about this. Yeah, it's wonderful. Like there's no crowds, and yeah, and they let me paint. It's just like me and a couple other artists and the mice. There's little mice that run around.
Oh, that is so cool. I have been in some pretty incredible places all by myself before after hours.
Really?
I've,
Where have you been?
I've painted and drawn in the U.S. Capitol all by myself when there's
Oh, wow.
a handful of Capitol policemen, and it's a really neat
Oh,
experience.
wow.
I would love to just invite myself and tag along on one of these excursions sometime. I promise I won't spill too much paint. There are a number of questions coming in, and first of all, there are people checking in from all over the place. So welcome to everybody. North Carolina, Florida, Colorado, Arizona, California, Oregon, people checking in from all over the place. So it's great to see you all. Somebody is asking if this is oil or acrylic. And that's Lana Gale is asking.
Nice. Great question. Yep, this is oil. And I do use certain mediums that help it dry a little bit faster. So, it'll dry in a couple days depending on how thick it is. So I kind of just work in layers with, it's oil paints.
Can you explain the way that you work in layers to people? That's something I was always very curious about when I was younger.
That's true. Well, sometimes it actually can be done in different ways. Sometimes I'll do like kind of a drawing that's like an underpainting, but mostly just like it's like a drawing in brown. For this painting, I actually worked more kind of like 𝗖𝗄𝗄𝗏, just on the figure. It was done all in one session in 4 hours. So I did start with just dots and lines to get the basic like scale, and then kind of mapped in the light side and the shadow side, the colors just fairly flat. And when I brought it in, to the life painting session, I had like a couple, kind of brush strokes that might become the ground plane. I sort of knew I was going to put her outside. And then, so the figure was done 𝗖𝗄𝗏 all in one day, but then I like let that dry so that I wouldn't mess it up if I start mucking around with it, because I was kind of liking the way the figure was going. And then I started to like smear in some just like, following my intuition, just trying some stuff out, like not taking it not that I'm not taking it seriously, because actually I always take my art seriously, but trying not to like take it too seriously. Like we actually, I kind of need to like just allow myself to try things out sometimes, but knowing that I could, change it. And so I let that dry, and then, went in with the sky to kind of, I'm working on cleaning up some of the edges, and now I'm kind of like going on top of, the sort of rough start with a little bit more detail. Yeah. Adding highlights.
That makes perfect sense. I try to maintain the approach of looking at every painting I do like an experiment all the way through, and not getting too locked into anything.
Exactly, because like, but it's hard. I know we really care about our art, which is a good thing. But sometimes it gets in the way. We need to just.
I remember somebody saying to me once, "There's nothing worse than having a great start." Because then you think, oh man, this is working. I don't want to mess it up. I don't want to try anything out. I got to play it safe. And that's no way to paint, is it?
Oh, that's so true. It's almost easier to have a terrible start, because then you're like, well, nothing to lose. I'll just try anything at this point.
Right.
Yeah, and as I'm doing it too, there's a couple considerations. Like, of course, on the figure, which was established first, the light is coming this way on the model. So as I add the elements, and especially as I, try to define like a light side and shadow side, this is a little lizard over here. I need to make sure that I have like the light coming from the same direction on all of the elements. And then there's even a certain like structure in terms of the color and temperature, like the warms and the cools of the lighting. So the lightest notes are a little bit warm. We've got a warm light on the model. And then along the place where the light and shadow meet, there's quite a strong cool. And then the darkest darks are quite warm. So to make it feel cohesive, I'm going to sort of maintain that and have my darkest darks in, some of these leaves, get into the little bit warm sort of notes and get, some kind of cool like half tones and then having the lightest lights. Actually, it's a bit unusual for me. Normally I make my lightest lights a bit cool, but having the lightest lights like I've done with the bird up here, a little bit warm, will help like unify the various elements with the figure itself.
Yeah, there's something wonderfully believable about this, even though it's so fantastical, which you're achieving through the believability of the temperature of the light.
Thanks. Yes, exactly. Yep. Yeah, because having like, temperature changes just looks really good in a painting. And if there's a little bit of temperature changes, the eye is just like so happy that it kind of just like accepts it. Like it's like thrilled to see a bit of warmth. So the leaf isn't like all super green. That might look artificial, well, of course, you know that. Yeah, and so like having having some warms and some cools, it just makes it more visually exciting.
Incidentally, Loretta was asking if that's a ferret or a squirrel that you're painting. It's hard for her to tell because she's watching it on her phone and it's so small. So I'm glad you explained that it's a lizard.
Yes, and it's very early stages. So, yeah, like I was saying, like trying not to like get overly concerned when I'm just
Please don't
snapping.
misunderstand. It's a fantastic lizard.
Oh no!
But she was looking at it on her phone, so it's obviously, 0.5 millimeter tall. So
That's true. And I was considering making it some kind of rodent, so she's not far off. Like I just wanted a little critter in there, and I sort of smeared in a shape. So it almost became sort of like a ferret. Actually, it was almost going to be an anteater, but then I decided to make it a lizard.
I like history a lot. And when I was younger, I still am, but I was massively into medieval history, and I loved the illuminated manuscripts.
Oh.
And I always thought it was great that the monks who created them and the nuns just sat there and they drew the most fantastically wonderful paintings in the margins. And I could sort of get lost in looking at those, at the little lizards and the flowers and the bugs and the squirrels and everything running around. And your work sort of calls that to mind in a very nice way.
And that's another reference that I did pull out when I was like sitting down thinking about this. I have multiple books of like illuminated manuscripts, just like reproductions of them. And so I was looking at that too. And I love that kind of thing where art's referencing art, it's just really interesting. Yeah.
And it does, you were mentioning Art Nouveau, I think. It does have that
Exactly.
swirly, natural feeling about it too. It's just a really interesting piece.
Thank you. Yeah, I was definitely thinking of Art Nouveau. Somehow it's interesting to me to take like realism and try as much as I can to like render it in a way that's like believable with my realistic, sort of training and stuff, but sort of maneuvering things so that it has this sort of designy kind of sense.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I mean, because no matter how many little details you seem to be putting in, it's still one image that has to work as at a glance.
That is actually the number one key thing that I think we all struggle with art is like, how do we take all of these various components and make somehow a unified, cohesive painting? Like, I think I don't know that this painting is 100% there yet, but it's hopefully going to end there. But that's always the goal, is to somehow make it like pull together. And that's what I think like total master artists succeed in doing, is having the whole thing kind of pull together in this like cohesive way. And I think a lot of that has to do with like the design of the notan, so the arrangement of light and dark shapes, and looking at that sort of compositional like arrangement, sort of the bigger picture. Because I've definitely done a lot of paintings where the details are quite nice, but when I look at the thing overall, it just doesn't pull together.
Yeah, I did one recently when I remember thinking, well, everything about this painting is good except the painting stinks. So that's great.
Exactly. And it's so sad. It's like the hardest thing.
Yeah. By the way, Sandy is asking, what size and type of brush are you using? And she says, great lines.
Aw, thank you. Well, this is, right now, this is just like a round number 2. It says it's a number 2, but really it's like just a small brush. I think some brands might call it like a 1 or even a 0. It's very small. I do have a smaller one that I'll probably pull out as well. And then this one, which I know looks like the scrubbiest little brush ever, but it's exactly how I like it. It's called a grainer brush. I don't know if I can get a good shot at it here. So there's some long hairs and some short hairs. It's a 1/4 inch in width, the grainer. And it's good for like when you want to do some blending, because it almost makes like sort of a cross-hatching sort of effect, because some hairs are longer and some hairs are shorter, so it kind of creates kind of like little lines, little. Yeah, I used it actually almost exclusively for the figure. Like you can just do this little side to side, I'll just pretend to do it, but like what I call the wiggle stroke. It's just wiggling a little side to side or whatever, and it'll beautifully blend. Like it's such a good brush. It's I know it looks like the scrubbiest little brush, but it's really good. Yeah. Actually, I also want to talk about, like when we're playing around with our art in this way, it's really fun to pull in different types of techniques, different types of paint applications. So one thing I've been doing recently, I was reading about this artist, 𝗍𝗶𝗴𝗀, a surrealist, and I did this kind of glaze. I wonder if I can get my camera. I'll hold the painting up. I did this glaze, in here, some greens and some browns. And it was like with some oil mixed in. And then I sprayed it with Gamsol, and it's sort of like,
oh, wow. That creates a very cool texture.
Yes, it's very fun. I think it's really beautiful. So it's fun to have these kind of different types of techniques in our art.
Yeah, and I've often thought that a variety of textures and techniques can really help with nature in particular, because it is so varied.
Yes.
And if we can manage to get the grass to have a different feel than the clouds, and to have a different feel than the person's hair or whatever it is, then it might feel varied and complicated enough to be believable.
But I think so too. Like it's like the figure, we want to get the rendering and the light and the colors and the line and everything. And with the landscape, I mean, we've got the same considerations, but then there's also texture, and it's really beautiful to use the paint in certain ways that just create, texture.
Carl is asking, how do you like the narrative to show through your paintings?
Oh, well, that's a great question. For me, I definitely do like paintings with like a little bit of a narrative. I like them to be like not like super clear, so a little bit ambiguous. Like I find that if it like hits you over the head and it's super clear what the narrative is, it seems a little bit more illustrative, which I love illustrations. I love it. I like illustration too, but so I kind of like the narrative to like leave you with questions, but sort of leave enough cues about what you're like getting at, that people can kind of take some time to figure it out. Like there's lots of connotation. Each thing that we do has a certain connotation, like the intertwining vines, the sort of like web of creatures, like it signals that we read visually that we are understanding, but if we try to like put it into words, we may not know the exact words, but people are really like we're really good visual readers, even if we don't, even if like most people look at my art and probably have a little bit of a question like, what is it about? Because it doesn't like tell you exactly, but they still get a little feeling about what it's about. And that's for me where I like my narratives to land.
Yeah, that makes great sense.
Yeah, it's such a good question.
And you seem to be working the entire image, foreground, background, elements, here and there and everywhere.
Yeah, that's true. I think that right now I'm at that trying to pull it all together stage where I need to sort of like, just work sort of holistically. And later I'll probably get into specific details a little bit more, mostly in ways that'll guide the eye around. Like we'll kind of go here and then, kind of up and through here. So I'll kind of give extra detail to like a couple things along that pathway. But for now, I'm sort of working the whole image. Actually, a lot of the time, different artists work differently, but a lot of the time I do work in that holistic way where I'm like jumping all over the place. How do you work at Gavin?
Well, it sort of depends. Sometimes, often I will kind of plan out the composition and try to go as far as I can with the composition as possible. And then sometimes I'll start with my focal point and sort of expand out from there. Sometimes I'll sort of work from back to front. I mean, if I'm working on a landscape, if I'm working on a portrait, I'll try to figure out as much as I can about the composition and the lighting and the kind of psychological effect that I want. With a portrait, I usually start with the face because I feel like until I get that, I don't have anything, and that might take a long time. I might nail it, or I might just sit there flailing away for ages. So I like to kind of lock in the face once I've figured out all of the creative things, which are the fun part. But with a landscape, sometimes I'll start with the light, sometimes I'll start with the color, sometimes I'll start with the background, sometimes I'll start with the focal point. It sort of depends. I don't really have one way that I work.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I'm kind of similar. I just sort of do whatever it takes. I don't know.
Yeah. Sort of like the fight for my life in a bar in a movie.
Exactly.
If I have to grab for a bottle or a knife or a chair, whatever it is,
exactly.
I'll use it.
Yep, exactly. And those are often the moments where suddenly something cool happens where you're like, "Wah!"
Yeah. I used to kind of methodically paint from back to front when I painted landscapes because it just made perfect sense to me, and it looked like my heroes like Frederick Church and some of the people that I admire painted that way. And at a certain point, I realized that it was just, it was getting formulaic, and I was putting in too much information in the places where I didn't need it, and so I tried to break out of that. And painting got a lot more fun when I didn't have a specific way that I kind of worked every time.
Yeah, that's true. I've heard an artist, Enrique Martinez Celaya, say that he always starts his next show like on the basis of like his weaknesses as an artist. So he's just always trying to do whatever he can't really do that well. And that's really interesting. And I find that sometimes my artistic like interests get moved in that way. Like I paint a lot with a sort of not having a super strong focus on edges, like not really having sharp edges a lot of the time, and more focus on form. But then sometimes I see paintings that are like super sharp edges, and I'm like, whoa! So I can hardly believe my eyes, and then I like want to try it. And
yeah, there's always a new toy that I see in the toy store window that I want to go get. And a lot of time, every painting I do sort of winds up being, what do I want to learn from this? What is that new toy that I want to go out and be able to have that maybe I don't understand, or I'm not comfortable with, or I've never tried before. So this painting will be an excuse to go out and learn it.
Totally. And I love that. Like, I like just letting our interests guide us. And our paintings still have cohesion. I once was actually an artist that sort of like painted the same thing all the time. Like I had like a really good, it was like really selling really well. Actually, I still like those paintings, but it was becoming really boring, and so I decided that I really wanted to just allow myself to paint whatever I feel like. And I don't know, they still have like a cohesion, luckily.
Oh, absolutely. Well, because I when I see your work, I see what I would imagine to be the things that interest you and that move you, and it seems to me that each painting
Totally.
looks different, and the lighting is different, and the setting is different, and everything. But those things are inside you, and they're coming out.
Totally. And I like that better as far as finding our voice, where we find our voice in a broad way that's like, truly our voice, and it's going to encompass a lot of things, and it gives us room to like explore all of it, rather than our voice sort of being nailed in as like, I paint, one thing,
Right.
subject matter wise or whatever. Yeah.
Or it being sort of dependent on style. Like I remember when I was learning, every painting I did, I would see some new artist and go, oh man, I want to paint like them,
Yes. That's true. I wonder if most of us have started out at some point where we have like a million bodies of work that look like every different artist. That's fun too. I think each stage is so necessary. I wouldn't want to cut out any of it.
Yeah. I got a great piece of advice from an artist when I was first starting out. I was in one of those sidewalk shows, and my paintings were all over the place. Some were, I mean, just they looked like they were done. If there were 12 paintings, they looked like they were done by 9 different artists. And he said, your paintings are, I'm going to give you a piece of advice. Your paintings are all over the place, and that's good. You have to go through that. You have to figure out what you want, and what you're interested in. At a certain point, you're going to have to hone it down, but that'll probably happen naturally. And, just remember that it's okay to be going through this stage.
Yes, you're so lucky that that's like who you talk to, and they said that, because I think everyone has good intentions when they give us feedback when we're getting started as an artist and stuff, but it's not that uncommon probably to like hear too early on that we have to have like a real cohesive style, and then to get so focused on that we don't allow the whole experimentation phase. And then, because ideally, like what I try to do is still have the experimentation phase in my work, but luckily it's like the broad expanse of everything that I always like to experiment with, and it becomes my voice.
Uh-huh. There was definitely a subtext that I wasn't going to have a great career or sell a lot of paintings if I kind of just stuck with that approach and didn't deviate. But
and that is true.
It was helpful. I mean, it was helpful to hear that message too.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah, because that is true. Yeah, we do at some point have to sort of have a clear voice. But yeah, not to like try to impose that on ourselves too early on, like, and in an artificial way, I think.
So it looks like you're adding the type of little details that are making some of these forms a little more three-dimensional, and creating more depth, putting certain things in front of other things, and adding a plane here and a glint of light there. Can you talk technically about what you're doing?
Yeah, well, a lot of it right now is also focused on edges too, like where the sky meets these little vines is, really catches our eyes. So, yeah, I'm kind of like working the edges and just trying to like clean it up and putting the vines on top of the sky rather than the sky being clearly put on top of vines. And then I'm trying in little places. It doesn't have to be all over, but in little places where I can, to have like a little light side and a little shadow side on these little little vines. It's pretty like minute, but and then with the leaves, yeah, so it's so much about edges. Like with the leaves where it overlaps the figure, I was adding some little highlights, to bring the leaf forward, and then maybe like darkening the skin, you know, a little bit around the leaf to push
Hmm.
the figure back. And that's a good idea. I should do more of that. So a lot of edges. Also, I was kind of darkening the edge of the figure right where she meets the background, because there is such strong light on the figure that I want to make sure it's clear that it's like, this is dark, she's dark, the vines are dark, the sky is light, so that there's that clear, like, no tan, the sort of light side and shadow side.
Right.
Yeah, the light and dark interaction of shapes. Yeah. And then shadows, like cast shadows, like I was putting little cast shadows, which also relates to edges around some of the flowers, like on the ground and where her feet meet the ground. Um, Again, keeping in mind that the light's coming this way, so there'll be, you know, a cast shadow going this way on everything. Yeah.
Right.
Yes. What else? Let's see. Yeah, and then as I'm like doing that, like what I was talking about the darkest darks being warm, it'll look really nice if I kind of, you know, make the darkest darks in most places quite warm, you know? So I'll kind of go
Hmm.
through, and I'm making like, um, I like to use like quite like a kind of surprising like reddish color. So there's some alizarin permanent and some ultramarine blue, but it's like surprisingly reddish, you know, to really make sort of a
Hmm.
glow at the warmest notes. I love when I go to museums and look at like these master artists, and you look at like the darkest darks, like say in the nostrils or the tear ducts of the eyes, and they're like super red, like pure red. And it looks so visually exciting.
It's so believable. And then in a lot of
Totally.
those paintings, and say, portraits that you see in museums, I'll find that something that in a photograph would be black, say the crease above the
Exactly.
eyelid,
Yeah.
that in a photograph would be black, and it sort of reads as black from across the room. But when you get up close and compare it to the dark in the hair or the shadow in the person's black cloak or whatever it is, it's maybe a 6 or a 7 out of 10, on the value scale. And
Yep.
it's fascinating that I never get tired of
I
examining
know.
those and looking at kind of the restraint that artists have showed.
Yes. Oh, that's so true. Yeah, and yeah, that's exactly it. Like with the if we take a photo, and I don't mind working from photos because sometimes, you know, I couldn't sort of have this lizard pose for me sometimes. But they can be really useful to have photos. But instead of like making all the blacks black, sort of livening it up with like what we understand about painting from life. So making the shadows warm and that kind of giving like a cohesion to the painting and the visual excitement. But yeah, and I try to like on my portraits push those nostrils and tear ducts really warm. But then when I go and look at like, you know, like the Sargent show or something at the Met, I'm still blown away. Like, whoa, it's like
Yeah.
practically cadmium red.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. But then you look at the person standing next to you and you go, oh, that is really red. And it's nowhere near as dark as the black in their shirt. Yeah, it's
Totally.
sort of the triumph of observation over making assumptions of what
Mm.
things ought to be.
Yes. Yeah, totally. And that's probably why so many artists like us like to get so much experience working from life. Like this model was painted from life. The colors are so much better from life. And that way we can sort of learn and internalize these things, keep some paintings around our studio that were done from life, and then it's fine to work from photos. Some artists are against it, and that's fine too, but I'm okay with working from photos. Okay, you know, adding that, like, and using as much life as possible, but keeping the paintings that we did from life laying around to influence our color choices.
Yeah, I've got closets full of just tiny little studies that I've either done from a model or done outside. It's hundreds.
Yeah.
And I'll pull them
And
out and I'll refer to them and go, oh, okay, yeah, that was that situation. I remember that.
totally. And like having the unified light and sometimes like the one light source set up, obviously, and sometimes putting gels over the light, like we put sort of a yellow gel over the light when we set up this figure, and it was amazing. And I think it still looks pretty naturalistic, but it was amazing how cool the place where the light and shadow meet, how cool some of these notes got next to the bright, warm light.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And in a photo, it'll all just look like tan, and then you'll see it in person, and it'll be so vibrant.
Yeah. And yeah, even when I like paint my kind of fantastical paintings, I still hire models and get them out. For a while, I wasn't like, because I would get most of it set up from, from photos or even from me posing for like all of the poses. But then, I just couldn't seem to get good colors. And so then I started to like hire models to take those poses that were already started. And immediately the paintings got so much better. It was like very satisfying.
Yeah, I go out of my way. I mean, I do plenty of paintings in the studio that I'm basing primarily on photos, but I try to get as much information from life as possible. And even just 15 or 20 minutes worth of a color study.
Yeah.
Sometimes I say to myself, I've been doing this a long time. I know how to paint this lighting condition. I've done it a million times. And then, it's always so much better if I can just find the color from life. And then sure, I'll paint the doorknobs and the windowsills from photographs. But if I have a sense of the overall color, the specific color, that really helps me.
100%. And it is surprising. I feel the same as you. Like, I should be able to do this by now.
Right.
But like, that's why I like to go in. I'll probably take this into the Natural History Museum and look at some of their lizards and birds and do even just a couple. The brushstrokes too are different from life, like, because I'm more in a panic and in a rush.
Yeah.
So I do these fresh brushstrokes, like bold, confident brushstrokes. It's just always better if there's any way that I can get some life like painting in. Also I want to say though that I'm really not in like, I've trained from so many people that are like all about like only paint from life, and that's so cool. Like I love that, but I'm not about that at all. Like I'm totally fine with using some photos. I think it can really enhance like our range, and I think it's great. But I have discovered that within that, it still is like so great to any way that we can get. If I took this outside into Central Park and did a couple little twigs sitting there from life, it would be better. Like anything I can do to make it get a couple brush strokes from life will add depth to it.
Oh, totally. This afternoon, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
I'm working on a commission painting right now, but on anything, on portraits or whatever I'm working on, if there's a plant anywhere in it, I'll either bring it down to my
100%.
studio from upstairs, or I'll just go into my backyard and find something that could work.
Totally.
And it's not only easier. Like one of the things I try to convey to my students, because a lot of them basically say some version of "I don't have time," which I completely get. I 100% understand the limitations of time on human beings, but I find that if I am working from life, it takes so much quicker, including packing up all my stuff, driving to wherever, having to park, going in.
Yeah.
But like, it's just so much faster for the reason you just said. Your brushwork, you're sort of skipping the things that don't matter. You're putting in the things that do matter. I personally don't make as many mistakes because I can actually see what I'm doing as opposed to in a photo or even that's blown up on my monitor. So I try to impart to my students that they'll probably be saving a lot of time by at least, working a little from life.
Yep. That's totally true. And it's also like, I think a little bit more fun. Like it's kind of a rush. It's kind of like a panic. Like you're sort of like, I have limited time and I need to get this done. And it's sort of a rush. And it's like, and it's exciting because you do something and you're like, whoa, that's working.
Totally. I totally agree with you. Okay, so you have between 5 and 10 minutes on this.
Perfect. Let's see here. So yeah, I mean, as I kind of, not that it's necessarily getting close to the finishing touches, but as it starts to head towards getting into finishing touches, it's all about the edges. Like some of these edges still look pretty kind of messy and stuff like that, especially where the vines meet the sky. And right now the sky is a little bit wet, so it's a bit hard to really get in there, but I think a lot of the time spent will be spent just giving little a little bit more clarity to some, like cleaning up some of these edges, and having some soft edges is nice, but I don't want to have like mucky little messy sort of edges. And sometimes this grainer brush is really good for soft edges. I'll take the paint off the brush, like wiping it, and then if I just do like a little kind of airplane stroke, which is where the brush is like on the canvas and you lift and pull as you go, it sort of it makes a nice soft edge and can sort of push a shape back, which it's nice to have some soft edges. So
That's really helpful, I think. I think that people will be really interested in hearing about that.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm also kind of like, I mean, it's always like so scary, right? When we've like done a figure painting from life, we need to like really focus and not like change it too much when we bring it back to our studio. For the most part, I haven't worked on the figure. But I'm just feeling this like curiosity about what would happen if I somehow just darkened slightly some of these edges as it gets to, so it rounds into a slightly darker note. A lot of the time, what I call like intuition, which is like guiding my art, happens as a curiosity, and I've learned to like listen to that curiosity and proceed a little bit carefully, because it is a figure painting done from life and I don't want to start changing the whole thing. But I'm just thinking that it's going to work nicely to have the figure read just a little bit more clearly as a dark shape on the light sky.
It seems like one of the major elements in this painting for you is the contrast of the figure in the vines in the foreground against the light of the background.
Yeah, because it kind of goes back to the whole problem that we face as artists of trying to make the painting like cohesive and sort of work as a whole. And I think to do that, our main strategy is the use of no-tan, getting the arrangement of light and dark shapes to be like really clear and really strong.
And you just defined that, but in case anybody is not familiar with that term, can you tell people what no-tan means?
Totally, yeah. And so no-tan, it's, I think, a Japanese word that means like light and dark shapes. But in composition, it's really important. Like, so actually, a good way to think about it is like if you think of like a tile or a carpet that has like light shapes and dark shapes and little patterns that sort of merge the two together in this beautiful way. Like if you go to Florence and look at the Duomo, all those amazing patterns of light and dark shapes like integrating in this beautiful way. That's kind of what I think of when I think of no-tan. So I want the arrangement of the light shapes and the dark shapes to like intermingle in an interesting kind of way. And yeah, but I need to make sure that it's like clear that this is like sort of the dark shape. And a lot of the time the color or the tone at the edge of the object sort of defines the way we read that object. So although this is quite light here, if it gets a little bit darker right before it meets the light sky, then we understand, she's dark and it's light.
Right. Carl is asking, when you go larger in size, does your imagination have more room to grow?
I love going large. It's does your imagination have more room to grow? Let me think. Well, I kind of think maybe it does. I don't know. It's just fun. Like you can just kind of play with it. Sometimes it feels like you're dancing with the canvas. I like to give myself like a long time to work on a canvas that's large too. I think the biggest breakthrough I ever had in my art was on a really large canvas where I just kept working on it until it was done. Like it started out as a painting that I didn't really have the technical skills to do. Like it was like so big and so complicated and integrating my imagination. it was like very ambitious, and it was like fun, but it was like not succeeding from the start, but it was fun, and I thought it was okay. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't like there or anything. But I just stuck with it long enough to figure out how to resolve those things that weren't quite working, but were kind of close or whatever. And by the time I finished it, I had found my voice as an artist. I kind of write
Wow,
about this in my book, actually, Become a Great Artist.
But we ought to say that you do have a book. You're not joking.
Yes.
You do have a book.
Yes. It's called Become a Great Artist, and it's all about finding your voice as an artist, and how I found my voice as an artist, and it kind of aligns closely with the class that I teach called the Visionary Artist Master Program, once a year, that helps artists find their voice. Yeah, I mean, for me, finding your voice as an artist it's like such an important thing. I think it's because it actually took me a long time to find my voice as an artist. I find some people kind of just know themselves, and they just like know their voice, and they trust themselves every step of the way. But I wasn't really one of those people. I doubted myself every step of the way. And I had to come up with strategies to figure out who I was and find my voice.
Well, that makes all the sense in the world. I think so many people's, this is just my private theory, which I have come up with in the last 45 seconds. I think so many artists' voices are sort of imposed upon them.
Yeah.
For hundreds of years, it was whoever their teacher, whoever their master was, sort of gave them a voice. And then after that, to a large degree, it's still sort of that, or whoever was a big influence when they were 18 or 21 or whatever it is. And I think it's interesting to see artists working through that and finding their voice. I mean, I think that's one of the things that we all really respond to. I could sit here all afternoon and, we could have a beer or a cup of coffee and talk about my favorite musicians or, your favorite painters and, the early stages of their career, and then them sort of, that one breakthrough thing where you can kind of see them coming into their own and finding their voice. I think it's fascinating.
Totally. Yeah, it's like the great challenge and the great joy as an artist. And I don't know, everything to do with painting seems to tie into life. So when I started to trust myself more in my paintings, I started to trust myself more in my life itself, and everything kind of got more in a line. Because actually, when I first started painting, I mean, I was just so amazed to be painting. It was like, I can't even believe that I'm doing this. And I just sort of was like painting, similar paintings to what my amazing first teacher, 𝗖𝗶𝗁 was painting. And then they started to sell really well, and but I didn't quite like look inward and kind of, or even know how to do that. And it took some mining to sort of get in there and figure out what I actually want to paint. Because we're so, I mean, we're all like so socialized as humans, which is like, it's good that we're socialized, but it kind of buries a lot of our inner instincts. So it can be hard. I mean, for some people, I think it's easy, but for some reason, it was really hard for me to like get in touch with my own inclinations.
Oh, that makes all the sense in the world. Okay, we only have 2 more minutes, and we have time for one last question. Kathleen is asking, is there a particular way you approach moving the observer's eye within the composition? What do you look to do?
Well, that's a really good question. So, one of the things that I've studied a lot is composition, and I'll try to make this quick, but because when I was trying to find my voice, I realized I didn't understand much about composition. So every painting that we do, there could be cases where it's not true, but typically we'll want to make sure we have like one center of interest. So that's like this area, and the eye will go there first, and it should have the highest contrast, light and dark, contrast. So we just go straight to our center of interest. There's like no question. And then there's different ways to move the eye around. And often, I think, I've heard that the way an artist composes something, a painting or a drawing, is linked to like how we see ourselves in the world. So I think everyone will do it a little bit differently, but I often like have us go to the center of interest and then kind of move around in a circular way. And I also like pyramidal compositions that are like kind of stable. So so I'll kind of bring like contrast here and detail there, contrast just sort of a secondary thing, and then kind of guide the eye around, and being careful about the corners. So this kind guides us up. It's kind of like there, like a shape that's sort of like, you can imagine, what's it called, like a vignette type of thing. You know, this back sort of guides us around and points us down, and this flower is kind of picking us back up and catching us and pulling us around this way. And then the vines are pushing us back up. And so that's kind of how I often do it. And it's such a great question. I think we could spend like endless hours in our life as artists, and we'll enjoy every second of it trying to understand composition.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, listen, Kristy, that was awesome. Thank you so much for showing us and for sort of including us a little bit in your process. It's really cool to see you work on that painting. And everyone, I hope that you enjoyed today's demo. Don't forget to visit Kristy's website, KristyGordon.com. That's Kristy, Kristy, Gordon.com. Follow her on Instagram @GordonArt. And Kristy, thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much, Gavin. It was so great to see you again and chat with you.
It was great to see you too. So beautiful painting, and good luck with everything. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks.
So, all right. So everybody, I have a gift for you. You can download the free video, 97 Incredible Art Secrets. Go to 97artsecrets.com /ASL. If you haven't signed up for Plein Air Live, it's time to do so. November 6th through 8th, 2025, with Essential Techniques Day on November 5th. 3 days to fast track your journey to outdoor painting. Sign up at pleinairlive.com. And let's watch this short video.
Every artist knows the frustration. You want to grow, to break through, to see your paintings come alive. But too often you're painting alone, stuck in the same routines, not knowing what's missing. Photos lie, books only go so far, and it can feel like the true secrets of painting are locked away. But what if, in just 3 days, you could watch the world's top plein air and landscape painters, brush in hand, showing you every step of their process? What if you could ask your questions and learn the techniques it took them decades to master without ever leaving home? This November, join us for Plein Air Live, the world's largest online painting conference. You'll learn from legends like Kevin McPherson, Cindy Barron, Kathleen Hudson, Cami Medlick, Bill Davidson, Mike Hernandez, and dozens more hand-picked masters. Across 3 days, plus an optional Essential Techniques Day for a guided refresher, you'll watch demonstrations, join interactive breakout rooms, and even paint along in evening sessions with new friends from around the globe. This kind of lineup will never happen again. You could spend tens of thousands traveling to workshops and still never gather this much talent in one place. But at Plein Air Live, it all comes to you. Don't miss your chance to grow, to connect, and to be inspired. Join us at Plein Air Live, November 6th through 8th, 2025.
All right, everyone. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel at Art School Live on YouTube and at Eric Rhodes on Instagram. And speaking of Eric, let's see what he's up to. Where in the world is Eric Rhodes?
Hey guys, it's Eric and I just arrived in Lucerne, Switzerland. This is my room looking out over this view of the lake. I think I saw a boat. Yep, there's a boat going by. And it looks a little gray today, but I think it's going to break and it's going to be really nice weather. It's fall here and beautiful, beautiful scenery. Anyway, we're going to be here in Lucerne for a couple of days. Then we're going to move on to Grindelwald and then to small villages and then on to Lake Como and Lake Garda, and then on to Venice. So big trip. I'm out here for 21 days. It's going to be amazing, painting almost every day. We got a couple of days of travel in between things, but it's going to be pretty remarkable. We love to do these trips. We'd love for you to come with us one time. But anyway, I just thought I'd tell you where I am and what I'm up to. I'm going to get some rest because I've been kind of up all night, and we will see you soon.
I love it. Isn't this a great thing that we get to do? Okay, everybody, check out my website, GavinGlakas.com. You guys can follow me on Instagram. And of course, you can get my videos, Glow, Creating Depth, Atmosphere, and Vibrant Sun, and Painting the Night at PaintTube TV. So thank you for joining us today. A huge thank you to Kristy. And tomorrow we'll be back with 𝗂𝗏𝗏. Bye, everybody.